Oh, hello, good afternoon. You'd have to have been living under a rock if you hadn't heard about or got some details about the problems in the USA at the moment. In relation to the USA Constitution, which is a document covenant to safeguard against despotism, tyranny, government overreach, etc., etc., corporatocracies, plutocracies, authoritarianism, etc., etc. America was based upon, with the Bill of Rights and the independence, on freedom. And because of the corruption, let's keep it general, of the situation over there, there's news from my old friend Kevin Annett across the ocean, connected with a new covenant, a new documentation of independence being drawn up by 22 states in the USA. And encouragingly, it's not anything to do with the political spectrum. It's not red and it's not blue. You know, good and wise people in the USA can see clearly that there needs to be a shake-up, a reset, whatever you want to call it. And so the USA are now making waves, and increasingly big waves, in order to resolve this increasingly bad situation. So before I read you the details of this covenant, literally hot off the press, printed this morning, this document was published January the 20th, 2026, today, and it clarifies clearly the state of the position of the USA and how things need to get resolved. But before we get into that, I just want to read you my favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes from Kevin Annett's fantastic book, Establishing the Reign of Natural Liberty, a Common Law Training Manual. It's from Joe McGuinness from the Irish Troubles in the 1970s. And this, I feel, is particularly relevant because if you get involved with violence, they're happy with that. They've got the riot police or the agents, whatever you want to call them, and they'll happily physically fight like that. Then the another option is protest. Well, protesting, it is basically acknowledging their authority over you. The cry is, the unwritten cry, reading between the lines, is govern us differently. Govern us differently. Change the way you govern us. But it's not creating space for a regime change, which is what this covenant does, which we'll get to in a second. So a quote from how the Irish maintained and created a motivation for the Republic to flourish under the iron fist of the British Empire, a very big authoritarian regime. So here's a quote from Joe McGuinness, a Republican veteran of the Irish Civil War, 1974 interview. I think he was quite old at that point. It was from earlier times. Our first real step towards independence from England was the establishment of our own Republican courts, right under the noses of the Brits. We set up a different legal system of our traditional Brehon laws, even while under military occupation. And we had to defend that system in arms. So you can say that once we started living under our own laws, everything else has to follow, right up to becoming a new nation. And so the situation in the USA is perhaps comparable to this, if not in parallel, that we the people need to establish a separate and an alternative and an independent rule of law so that characters like police officers or military personnel, etc., etc., can make a decision. Do they want to support and uphold and maintain the despotism and the tyranny and the oligarchy and the corporate, whatever you want to say, or do they see the degradation of their constitution to which they swear an oath of allegiance, and do they want to stand with we the people for the re-establishment, the reboot, the reset of the Constitution? So let's get to this covenant, this new Bill of Rights. Restoring the American Republic. A national covenant declaring independence from tyranny. Issued in the revolutionary spirit of 1776 by American citizens. Of course, for those people from Europe, perhaps you don't know that 1776 was the year when America established independence. Gathered in Constitutional Assemblies, January the 20th, 2026. When government descends to despotism, the people are absolved of any allegiance to it and are obliged to establish a new and just governance to ensure their liberty. Massachusetts Provincial Congress, October the 12th, 1974. 1774. Preamble. Our American Republic is teetering on the edge of destruction. An impeached criminal has unlawfully and unconstitutionally usurped the presidential office. Donald Trump has imposed a regime of tyranny at home and warfare and piracy abroad through an executive order dictatorship of rule by decree. I'll put a link in the description below. There's a video to accompany this from Kevin Annett and the International Common Law Courts of Justice. And he mentions in that video, he states in that video, a very important point that I'm going to back him up with 100%, in that Trump is the face of an agenda, a set of policies, etc., etc. And if it wasn't him, it would be somebody else. So I think it's important not to get too caught up in the cult of personality, right? That, you know, these leaders are line managers in many respects for a faceless authority above them, and often they're blackmailed and bribed, etc., etc. So, you know, if you're of the mindset that Trump is a madman doing mad things off his own decision making, I think you need to have a rethink about that. And so this idea of executive orders and this idea of emergency measures to bring in martial law, I think it's very connected with the economy as well, right? So Venezuela recently, they detached from using the dollar as the currency for trading oil. And as punishment, the USA, in terms of their financial rulers, overlords, they sent a message out to the rest of the world that if you detach from the dollar, you might get basically kidnapped and hauled out by us, you know, in a very threatening way. So you have to bring into account here the whole economic collapse that's looming on the USA. Placing himself above the law and not bound by the Constitution, Trump presides over a one-party state through the control of Congress, the Senate, and the Supreme Court, and the absence of any effective political opposition. With such unrestricted power, Trump has imposed a regime of police state terror on Americans that is destroying democracy and the rule of law and fracturing the nation. A quarter of a millennium after America's birth, our country is again ruled by a brutal, unaccountable monarch. Voting and mere protest will not undo this tyrant. As in 1776, and according to our first Declaration of Independence, when the people's liberties are endangered by government, it is the inherent right and duty of the people to overthrow and abolish it. Now is such a time. We, the American people, of 22 states and the District of Columbia, hereby invoke that right and the spirit of our Republic's founders. We have assembled as free sovereign citizens to issue this national covenant and declaration of independence that mutually separates us from the criminal Trump regime. We do so according to our inborn liberty and the recent judgment of our International Common Law Court of Justice. The verdict of that court declares the Trump regime to be a rogue power that threatens world peace and authorizes his removal from office. The court's ruling releases American citizens, the police and military and public officials from their allegiance to Donald Trump's government and authorizes Americans to depose and end his unlawful dictatorship. Let it be clear that our declaration is not coloured or partisan prejudice, for we include in our ranks both Democrats and Republicans. Rather, it arises from our heartfelt devotion to the American Republic and its Constitution, and our sworn duty to defend that Republic against all tyrants, whether foreign or domestic. In that spirit and purpose, we the people issue the following national covenant that binds its signatories in a sacred pledge and union to actively restore our American Republic. By this covenant, we separate ourselves from and seek to overturn Trump's corporate oligarchy, sparking a new spiritual birth of freedom in our nation. In the face of the greatest threat to our republic in its history, we can do nothing less than launch a second American Revolution. Listed are the states: Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri, West Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Kansas, South Dakota, Arizona, Nevada, Washington, Oregon, and California, and the District of Columbia. And I'm sure that list will get added to too, no doubt. Number 2, the court's verdict can be found at this website address, to be found in the description box below. A national covenant. It is a good thing when the people stand as one and dwell in peace on earth. Let us bury forever the weapons of war, hatred and cruelty, and live as equal brethren on this land given to us all. Daganawada, the great peacemaker of the Six Nations Confederacy, a nation of sovereign people, beholden to none save one another and the laws they establish. Our bold American experiment has garnered the hatred and wicked design of monarchs and tyrants everywhere. Yet, for all that, it is not a foreign enemy that will destroy our republic, but only we ourselves. John Adams, 1783. I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, so that both you and your children may live. Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 19. Standing under the judgment of heaven and posterity, seeking a lasting justice and liberty for all people, we invoke the wisdom and courage of our ancestors and the hopes of generations unborn, as we set forth this covenant and declaration. May the love and peace of the great mystery guide our thoughts, our words, and our actions. Amen. The seed of our American Republic was planted by those fleeing crown and papal tyranny. Standing on the shores of Cape Cod on a winter day in the year 1620, English Puritan refugees made a promise to God and one another to establish a new society of free, self-governing souls with no ruler save God. A chosen people who would be a light on a hill for all mankind. That pledge was the Mayflower Covenant, the world's first constitution. Number 3, the Mayflower document reads in part, "We whose names are underwritten do solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and of one another covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body, politic, to enact laws, constitutions and offices for the general good." Mayflower Compact, November the 11th, 1620. History has come full circle for Americans. A corporate oligarchy, as oppressive as any absolute monarch, rules the land through a government of, by, and for a clique of billionaires. Under their regime, the war our nation has inflicted on so much of the world has come home. Violence and poverty are everywhere in America, and suicidal despair grips our youth. The innocent are trafficked, jailed, and murdered as freedom is banished from the land, along with the rule of law. Nowhere in the controlled charade called electoral democracy is there an answer to this entrenched tyranny, for both political parties serve the corporate oligarchs. In the face of despotism, there is no new world to escape to anymore, only the one that we can create by reclaiming and restoring the fading righteous dream called America, where all people are created and remain equal. But to begin again, we must all stand under the judgment of history. The present tyranny has arisen from no one but ourselves. Choosing to serve corporate idols, we have turned our back on our original covenant to be a virtuous nation, free of kings and popes, where justice exists for all. The dictator Trump was bred by a country ruled by greed, violence, and moneyed corruption, whose rotten fruit we have all consumed. We must be cleansed of it if we are ever to be free. Such an inner revival among the people preceded our first American Revolution. Known as the Great Awakening, it filled our ancestors with a new, liberating spirit and confidence that they could know God's truth for themselves without kings, priests, or rulers. That inner spiritual self-governance gave these early Americans the vision and courage to fight for their rights, make the revolution, and create the republic after defeating the world's mightiest empire. Without new hearts and minds, and the actions that flowed from them, the people could never have birthed a new nation. And so too for us today. When asked how he and others had made the revolution, patriot Samuel Adams said, "We didn't make it. The revolution made us. We are changed into a new people in the course of fighting to bring about change. By struggling to end the present tyranny and create a new and better republic for all the people, we know that we will be made fit by our efforts to fulfill and enrich our founding covenant and earn our liberty." Armed with that hope and understanding, we, the signatories to this national covenant, do hereby combine in a binding and mutually protective relationship with all those who are committed to ending the Trump dictatorship and reclaiming our republic. To that end, we pledge ourselves to the following mutual purpose and course of action. Number 1, commencing today, Tuesday, January the 20th, 2026, we will enter into a time of fasting, reflection, and prayer to inwardly dissolve our ties to the present evil and declare our independence from it, asking for divine guidance and strength. Number 2, we will take personal responsibility for enacting this covenant by proclaiming and implementing it in our communities along with its Declaration of Independence, garnering support for both statements from our fellow citizens. Number 3, based on this covenant and declaration, we will establish local constitutional assemblies and common law courts to pass and enforce laws that dissolve the Trump regime and re-establish our republic at the grassroots. These assemblies will draft amendments to the United States Constitution and elect delegates to the new National People's Congress that will convene on July the 4th, 2026. As an aside, that's 250 years after the first Declaration of Independence, to the day. Number 4, to defend ourselves and all the people against the violence of the Trump regime, and standing on the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, we will form committees of public safety and citizens' militias in our local communities to defend our new republic and its assemblies and courts. Number 5, to that end, we will publicly call upon all civil servants, judges, politicians, the police and military to abide by their oath, to defend the Constitution by refusing to serve or obey the Trump administration, and by deposing him from office. We will especially appeal to the American military to not obey any orders issued by the usurping criminal Donald Trump. In the most trying days of the revolution, John Adams wrote, "Without a virtuous and responsible citizenry, the American public will not endure. Civic virtue consists of placing the welfare of all the people on par with one's own and shrinking no risk or duty in the pursuit and protection of such general good. To recover such virtue and re-establish the covenant we once were as a people chosen to manifest divine justice. For our ancestors made a pact among themselves and with eternity to not be like other people, to have no ruler over them save God, and to live in justice and equality with each other as their own sovereigns. We have let go of that promise and are suffering the enslaving consequences of betraying ourselves and our founding purpose. Now is the time to return to our sacred pledge and restore our heaven-ordained republic that once was a light for humanity and can be again. Armed with that assurance, let us begin and carry through to the end." Issued on this 20th day of January in the year 2026 and ratified by we the people. And then signatories may sign underneath. "I have made covenant with my chosen. Their seed I will establish forever." Psalm 89. A Declaration of Independence from the Trump regime. When in the course of inhuman events a people are subjugated by tyranny, they have the right and duty to serve, to sever all ties with that oppressing power and institute among themselves new and just governance for the good of all. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created and remain equal, and are endowed by their Maker with an inherent and unalienable right to life, liberty, happiness, and self-governance. Therefore, we, the sovereign citizens of the United States of America, as the ultimate source of all lawful authority, and according to necessity and natural law, do hereby proclaim the following. A predatory corporate power has insinuated itself into our republic and subverted the Constitution. The rule of law and democracy, in the interests of a clique of billionaires led by the convicted criminal Donald Trump. This unaccountable oligarchy is establishing a ruthless police state that is terrorizing and dividing Americans and waging wars of aggression abroad, with the aim of establishing a final absolute tyranny over a nation of digitized cyber slaves. Every effort to redress, reform and challenge Trump's corporate dictatorship of one-man rule has been met with violence, repression and increased subjugation. It is therefore incumbent on all American patriots to do everything in their power to oppose and stop this tyranny before it completely destroys our republic. Accordingly, number one, we the people refuse to acknowledge, obey or enforce any laws, statutes, decrees or executive orders issued by Donald Trump or its administration. Nor will we collect or pay federal taxes or enable the Trump regime in any matter. Number two, we the people will use every means to impede, disrupt, sabotage and overturn that regime, including through civil disobedience, work stoppages, boycotts and direct actions to remove Donald Trump from his illegitimate office in accordance with the Constitution and the verdict of the International Common Law Courts of Justice on January the 16th, 2026. A link to that document similarly in the description box below this video. Number three, we the people will ensure our liberties by convening sovereign constitutional assemblies and common law courts in our communities to pass and enforce laws that restore and defend our republic in accordance with our unalienable right of democratic self-governance. Number four, we the people appeal to all American citizens and government, police, military and judicial officers to join us in reclaiming our republic by refusing to obey or serve the Trump regime, by deposing Trump from office and by defending our sovereign constitutional assemblies and courts. These steps are required by the long history of crimes and personal depredations by Donald Trump and by the refusal of both political parties and the courts to stop Trump from unconstitutionally seizing and wielding power. Trump's court-documented involvement with Catholic clerics and Jeffrey Epstein in the ritual rape and murder of women and children, and his organising and profiting off a domestic human trafficking and slave trade is reason enough to depose Donald Trump and incarcerate him as an ongoing threat to all humanity. There's a link included here again in the show notes below, in the video notes below, in the description box. You can click to that documented involvement. Therefore, we the delegates to these constitutional assemblies, by the authority of our natural right as free-born citizens of the United States of America, do solemnly proclaim that these are sovereign constitutional assemblies and others convened for this purpose are and of right ought to be free and independent states that are absolved from any and all allegiance to Donald Trump and his regime. We further proclaim that all political connections between the citizens of these constitutional assemblies and the Trump administration are now and forever totally dissolved. And accordingly, that as freely elected and sovereign governments, these assemblies have the power and authority to make and enforce laws, administer justice, establish commerce, defend their governance in arms, provide for their general welfare and security, enter into foreign trade and diplomacy, and do any acts which independent states may of right do. Therefore, we highly resolve that on Saturday, July the 4th, 2026, the 250th anniversary of the first Declaration of Independence, we the delegates to these constitutional assemblies shall gather to assemble and establish a new National People's Congress and governance for our renewed republic, according to the will of our sovereign covenanted people. For the support of this binding declaration and its founding covenant, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence and the support of our allies in Canada and England, who have established the free sovereign republics of Canada and Albion, respectively, we mutually pledge to each other and to this sacred cause our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honour. Issued in lawful assembly across America on January the 20th, 2026, with the authority of the National Council of Constitutional Assemblies, to ascribe your name and organisation to this covenant and declaration and assist in forming local constitutional assemblies, contact John Bradley, corresponding secretary at constitutionalassemblies@proton.me. Again, in the show notes below, as is the complete document.